Welcome to Good Questions. Today is Psalm chapter 18, King James Version, and Merry Christmas. Psalm 18. I will love thee, O Lord, my strength. Verse 2. The Lord is my rock, my fortress, and my deliverer, my God, my strength, in whom I will trust, my buckler, and the horn of my salvation, and my high tower. Pause. There is lots of defensive imagery, as well as offensive, in a sense. A rock can be used as a stone for building a house. We also know that King David used a rock to slay a giant. The imagery of a fortress is used. If this psalmist is King David, he would have spent time in the army in fortresses. A buckler, let me make sure I'm using the correct definition for buckler. According to the Merriam-Webster, it is a buckler is a small round shield carried or worn on the arm. There are other definitions as well, but basically it's a shield. A high tower, that would be something very impressive to see. Which towers were high towers in Israel at the time that this was written? Psalm chapter 18. Verse 3. I will call upon the Lord, who is worthy to be praised. So shall I be saved from my enemies. Let me try that again. So shall I be saved from mine enemies. Pause. Why is the Lord worthy to be praised? Verse 4. The sorrows of death compassed me, and the floods of ungodly men made me afraid. Pause. Why is in the English the word floods used? Did the author spend much time in the rain? Is he a warrior? What are the sorrows of death? Verse 5. The sorrows of hell compassed me about. The snares of death prevented me. Pause. Is the English word sorrows in reference to sorrows of hell, and the English word sorrows of death from verse 4, are they the same Hebrew word? What are the snares of death? And from what did they prevent the author, since apparently the author is still alive? What did the author mean to do? Verse 6. In my distress I called upon the Lord, and cried unto my God. He heard my voice out of his temple, and my cry came before him, even into his ears. Pause. When was the author in distress? When did he call upon the Lord? Did he cry out loud, or did he cry with tears? To which temple does the author refer, and how does one get one's cry to God's temple? What did God do once he heard the author's cry? Verse 7. Then the earth shook and trembled. The foundations also of the hills moved and were shaken, because he was wroth. Pause. What does it mean for God to be wroth, or red, or angry? Did the earth literally shake and tremble? Is this something that the author experienced and he's now reliving it? The foundations of the hills were moved and shaken. Is this literal? Was there an earthquake? Verse 8. There went up a smoke out of his nostrils, and fire out of his mouth devoured. Coals were kindled by it. Pause. Is this some kind of ecstatic imagery being used by the author, or is this a literal description of what the author experienced? Was he able to see something heavenly that really existed, in a sense, in 3 dimensions on our plane? And was the author allowed to see this? Was it invisible to the rest of the world? Was it experienced? What value is there in being a little bit ecstatic? What value is there in being, for lack of a better word, and I have to be very careful how I say this, a little bit out of touch with the normal senses? Does God value this kind of ecstasy and ecstatic imagery and sensation? And how much of it is good? Verse 9. He bowed the heavens also, and came down, and darkness was under his feet. What does it mean for God to bow the heavens? What word is used for heavens? Did God literally come down from the sky and cast a shadow? Verse 10. And he rode upon a cherub, and did fly. Yea, he did fly upon the wings of the wind. Pause. This is some very ecstatic imagery. What does a cherub look like? What is its rank among the angels? Why does it have a special designation? How is being a cherub tie into flying upon the wings of the wind? Are the cherubs wind type entities? What does their physical form look like? And how do they appear when they are otherwise invisible? And the Lord then, is he in the appearance of a man riding with the cherub? Does the cherub appear similar to Elijah with the horse-drawn chariot, or as something else? Almost almost reads to me like a dragon, like riding a dragon. But maybe it's more like Pegasus, the flying horse. Verse 11. He made darkness his secret place. His pavilion round about him were dark waters and thick clouds of the skies. Pause. In what way is darkness a secret place? Is it where one cannot be found? Why would God need to be in a secret place? As if the whole world wouldn't know where he was. What shape is a pavilion? If the pavilion was dark waters and thick clouds, where then does this place exist? Because dark waters, usually are deep in the ocean, and thick clouds in the skies. What's going on here? Does God have some way to tunnel from the sky in a column of clouds like a tornado all the way down and bore into the waters beneath, like lightning striking the water? Verse 12. At the brightness that was before him, his thick clouds passed, hailstones and coals of fire. Pause. If God is not the bright one in this instance, or if he's covered in darkness, when it speaks of the brightness that was before him, does it mean that the brightness is shining out of God, or that God has almost like a pixie-like entity or light source, or like a lantern in front of him when it refers to the brightness that was before him? And the hailstones and coals of fire, these are completely opposite, Solomonically speaking, elements. Of course, coals of fire, the coal is related to the earth, and the fire is, of course, the famous element, fire. But the hailstones, that's related to water and ice. Very beautiful imagery. All these red, yellows, and blue clears, blue white, I guess. Verse 13. The Lord also thundered in the heavens, and the highest gave his voice. Hailstones and coals of fire. Pause. Why do we see hailstones and coals of fire twice in a row? Are these the same Hebrew expressions? Is the Lord the same as the highest? Are these two different names with two distinct characteristics? Is this used to imply the duality of thunder and lightning? Because when it says the Lord also thundered, does that actually invoke images of lightning, because this is read first, and then the highest gave his voice? Is God saying, is the author suggesting that he saw lightning come from God, and then he heard God's voice as thunder? Verse 14. Yea, he sent out his arrows, and scattered them, and he shot out lightnings and discomfited them. Pause. So here we see a different word, lightnings, as distinct from thunder, but we hear about the thunder, or we read about it after we read about the sound of the thunder, which is a reversal of what I would expect. Are the arrows of God related to lightning? Verse 15. Then the channels of waters were seen, and the foundations of the world were discovered, at thy rebuke, O Lord, at the blast of the breath of thy nostrils. Pause. This is a dense, imagery here, and I'm trying to make sense of it. What are the channels of water? How deep are they in the ocean? How deep are the foundations of the world? And when the author says, thy rebuke, O Lord, discovered the foundations of the world or uncovered them, is God angry at the earth, or is he just causing all kinds of havoc because of something that some bad person did? Why would it be helpful or necessary? Was it necessary to fall from the sky, dig through the water, and just completely go all the way to under the earth? What kind of a battle is being fought here if the plane of the battle normally we would think of as at the surface level of the earth? What kind of a war is going on here? Verse 16. He sent from above, he took me, he drew me out of many waters. Pause. Is the author referring to himself and his own experience? Is he a sailor, a mariner? Or is he speaking of someone else's experience? Or is he simply speaking ecstatically because he saw something in the midst of his trouble that he could not have otherwise known and was given a vision of it? When trouble comes our way, are there other battles under the earth, deep within the earth, that are taking place that we are not privy to unless we are given a vision of them? Why is it many waters? Why would it not be one water, such as deep water, from which the author was drawn? Verse 17. He delivered me from my strong enemy, and from them which hated me, for they were too strong for me. Pause. Which strong enemy is this? Why did they hate the author? Verse 18. They prevented me in the day of my calamity, but the Lord was my stay. Pause. Which day was the author's day of calamity? What does it feel like to survive such a calamity? To survive and to live to see another day after, in a sense, life has already ended, at least in the eyes of the author. Verse 19. He brought me forth also into a large place. He delivered me because he delighted in me. Pause. To which large place did the author arrive? And how did the author become so desirable or delightful, I suppose? in the eyes of God? What kind of a person is delightful in the eyes of God? Verse 20. The Lord rewarded me according to my righteousness. According to the cleanness of my hands hath he recompensed me. Pause. As a Christian, we are taught very clearly that no one is righteous, no, not one. This may be from the same family, even the same author in some way, shape, or form, or at least the same tribe. So, this is an important question to me because there is, it seems, a very important distinction here, because while everyone has unrighteous moments, it does appear that the author, in my eyes, is saying something that is distinct. And I'm curious, is the word righteousness here the same as the word for righteousness there? Because the author believes fully that God delights in him because of some righteousness that he does or has done. What is this righteous thing or this righteous way in which the author has lived? Does God look for the good and the redemption in people? Does God look for a reason to believe in people, especially those that believe in him? Verse 21. For I have kept the ways of the Lord, and have not wickedly departed from my God. Pause. What are the ways of the Lord, and how does one keep them? Verse 22. For all his judgments were before me, and I did not put away his statutes from me. Pause. What book or otherwise document, if there is a document, is the author reading or looking at when he knows about God's judgments? Is this a reference to the law of Moses or to another law? What are the statutes of God? Verse 23. I was also upright before him, and I kept myself from mine iniquity. Pause. What does this mean, to be upright before God and to keep oneself from one's sin? Do all people have weaknesses? Does God care if we work on our weaknesses and strengthen them? What reward is there in dealing with things, weaknesses especially, head on? Verse 24. Therefore hath the Lord recompensed me according to my righteousness, according to the cleanness of my hands in his eyesight. Pause. In what way did God repay the author according to his righteousness and according to the cleanness of his hands? Verse 25. With the merciful thou wilt shew thyself merciful, with an upright man thou wilt shew thyself upright. Pause. Is this a reference to David, the shepherd boy, who became a king after becoming a warrior? When the author says, to the merciful thou wilt show thyself merciful, is this a reference mainly to the fact that David neither slay his wicked father-in-law when he had the chance, or to the fact that he slay not um, Naboth, husband of Abigail, when he refused to look after David's men after David had offered protection from presumably bandits and Philistines for free. Um, does uprightness in the author's eyes refer to when David protected Naboth's flocks without taking any of them for himself, without presuming to take anything at all? Verse 26, with the pure thou wilt show thyself pure, and with the froward thou wilt show thyself froward. Pause. In what way was the author pure and show himself pure? What does the word froward imply or mean? I'm going to look it up. According to the Merriam-Webster, froward is habitually disposed to disobedience and the opposition. Okay, so someone who is, I guess, a rebel. So a froward appears to be a rebel, a contrarian. Verse 27, for thou wilt save the afflicted people, but wilt bring down high looks. Pause. When the author refers to high looks, does this imply those who are rich and proud, or who believe themselves to be superior in some way? Who is not afflicted in some way? Are there people that know they are afflicted and others who believe they are secure? Is not everyone afflicted in some way? Verse 28, for thou wilt light my candle. The Lord my God will enlighten my darkness. Verse 29, for by thee I have run through a troop, and by my God have I leapt over a wall. Pause. Which wall did the author leap over like a gazelle? What did that look like? Was the author running to battle or from battle? Was he saving someone or was he saving his own life? How did the author learn to behave like that and perform like that? Did the author spend many years chasing sheep? When the author says he has run through a troop, what was that like? What did that feel like? Where did that extra strength come from, and what did it feel like to be that strong, to fight an army single-handedly? Verse 30, as for God, his way is perfect. The word of the Lord is tried, and he is a buckler to all those that trust in him. Pause. Why does the author still refer to defensive imagery and not mention the sword? Verse 31, for who is God save the Lord, or who is a rock save our God? Pause. Is this a reference to a small rock or a large rock for a building, for a foundation? What did the houses of the day and the structures look like, and what was their composition? In a battlefield, was the earth often soft and slippery? What did it mean, and would it make sense to stand upon a rock if one had a choice? Is the rock used for elevation, to strike at the heads of the enemies and to make shielding easier because one no longer has to shield one's head as much because one is standing upon a rock. Is this the preferred mode of battle in ancient times, to stand upon a rock? Verse 32. It is God that girdeth me with strength and maketh my way perfect. How does pause? Pause. How does the author know that it is God that girdeth him with strength and makes his way perfect? Does God love others as well, whose ways are not perfect? What's the distinction? If one wants to become special or delightful to God, how does one do that? Verse 33. He maketh my feet like hinds' feet, and setteth me upon my high places. Pause. What are the high places of the author? And what does it feel like? And how does God make the author's feet like the feet of a deer? It's very special. Verse 34. He teacheth my hands to war, so that a bow of steel is broken by mine arms. Pause. Is this over the top, or did this really happen? It did. Which bow would be made out of steel? Is this a reference to iron? They did not seem, I don't think, to have steel, at least not high quality steel, back in those days. I thought that iron was about as far technologically as they were advanced. But maybe crude steel, or at least some kind of off-the-wall alloy was known, perhaps. I know that there are certain copper sources that are mixed with a little bit of nickel, such as what we use for our coins in the United States. It's called white copper, and this is what your quarters and nickels are generally in reference to. And it is kind of hard, and apparently it gets harder as you hit it. So I don't know if they had access to that depth of mining, but it's just curious, and I wonder how much it would bend, because I wouldn't necessarily use a bow made out of steel, but I suppose it's possible. But I'm curious, why does the author, what strong thing did the author break that would have otherwise been considered impossible? And how does God teach the author's hands to war? Verse 35. Thou hast also given me the shield of my salvation, and thy right hand hath holden me up, and the gentleness let me try that again. And thy gentleness hath made me great. Pause. So the author speaks of God as this falling from heaven, destroying angel riding a cherubim, all these things. And then it speaks of the Lord's gentleness. How does the author access God's gentleness? And how do we access God's gentleness, that we might become secure and great? Verse 36. Thou hast enlarged my steps under me, that my feet did not slip. Pause. What does the author mean by that God has enlarged his steps? Does that mean his strides are longer, or something else? Verse 37. I have pursued mine enemies and overtaken them. Neither did I turn again till they were consumed. Pause. When did the author do all of this? And did he show mercy to any remaining? And if not, why not? Verse 38, I have wounded them that they were not able to rise. They are fallen under my feet. Pause. What does it feel like to be completely victorious? Verse 39, for thou hast girded me with strength unto the battle. Thou hast subdued under me those that rose up against me. Pause. Who are they that rose up against the author? Verse 40, thou hast also given me the necks of mine enemies, that I might destroy them that hate me. Verse 41, they cried, but there was none to save them, even unto the Lord, but he answered them not. Pause. What is the distinction between the author and the author's enemies? How does the author know that these enemies of his cried unto the same Lord? Why were they not answered? What did they do wrong or not do right to not be heard? Verse 42, then did I beat them small as the dust before the wind. I did cast them out as the dirt in the streets. Verse 43, thou hast delivered me from the strivings of the people, and thou hast made me the head of the heathen. A people whom I have not known shall serve me. Pause. Who are the heathen? How did the author become head over them? And when the author says delivered from the strivings of the people, does this refer to the strivings of poverty or of opposition from certain people? Verse 44, as soon as they hear of me, they shall obey me. The strangers shall submit themselves unto me. Pause. To which people does this refer? To all people or to a specific people group such as the Philistines or of a certain city? Verse 45, the strangers shall fade away and be afraid out of their close places. Pause. When the author says the strangers shall fade away, does this mean from time and age or something else? And what does the phrase mean to be afraid out of their close places? Does this mean that they will not be safe, the strangers, even at home? Verse 46, the Lord liveth, and blessed be my rock, and let the God of my salvation be exalted. Pause. This is the line from a famous song. I think it's from the late 1980s, and it was a good song. The Lord liveth, and blessed be my rock, and let the God of my salvation be exalted. It brings back a lot of memories. Verse 47, it is God that avengeth me, and subdueth the people under me. Verse 48, he delivereth me from mine enemies. Yea, thou liftest me up above those that rise up against me. Thou hast delivered me from the violent man. Pause. Who is this violent man? Why does he rise up against the author? Verse 49. Therefore will I give thanks unto thee, O Lord, among the heathen, and sing praises unto thy name. Pause. Who are these heathen? And how will the king, and how much time will, this author spend with the heathen? And will he sing actual songs in front of them? Verse 50. Great deliverance giveth he to his king, and sheweth mercy to his anointed, to David, and to his seed forevermore. What are your good questions? Share your thoughts. Feel free to like and subscribe. Have a great day and Merry Christmas.